After spending the day visiting the Natural History Museum, I decided to end with a visit to Buckingham Palace. So I approached from the west, which would be Knightsbridge, and then walked through the park, heading through Wellington Arch. The area was, I would say, relatively well lit. Not a lot of pedestrians, though there are quite a few hotels in the area, but there were some cyclists, one or two people walking through the park. But I thought the Wellington Arch is pretty cool. When you walk by, it's like this stone structure. There's a lot of detail. From a distance, it just looked like, a regular arch. But when you get close up to it, they're like these doors with like really nice fine details in it. There's like really great carving in the stone. It's actually a really good landmark for setting you on the right course towards the palace, if you're walking, that is. And so we just continued on through the arch, and there is a rather long, and I do mean long, pathway that leads up to the palace. Along the way, there are these large columns that list like various countries that were British colonies. And so as you make your way down this pathway, it kind of adds to the suspense. Number one, it gives you like a really good idea of the scale of all of this, because I would think of this as like the drive to the palace, and it is long. In walking up, there's like these really big parks on the way to the palace, and it's like you have this basically road down the middle that has like a walking path, and you continue on. It's like maybe a good 10 or so minute walk at least, and then you approach from like the side of the palace, and it's actually very impressive in person. I'm not super into the royal family, so it wasn't like on my list of things to do to actually visit the palace as far as to see inside or to go on a tour. But as someone that likes architecture and design and things like that, I actually found the exterior to be quite impressive. Arriving at night, there weren't a lot of people around. There were like some barricades and whatnot, but you could get like right up to the gates, and you could get like a pretty good view of the palace. It was very nicely lit, so it's not like, you approach and it's in darkness or anything like that. I can't really speak to what it might look like in person during the day. I'm sure we've all seen pictures and video and whatnot when they have events or things like that going on of the palace during the day. But I actually found it really impressive at night. In a sense, it kind of reminded me of, if you think of the White House, right? Like these really famous landmarks that also play an iconic role in the history of America, the history of, or more so the culture and whatnot, what they represent in British and American culture. And, with like the gates outside, the facade is different from the White House, but like the feel of being there is quite similar. Feeling of grandeur. It's like, in the case of England, it's like, the monarch's house. Whereas when you visit the White House in DC, it's the president's house. And as part of that, there's a lot of scale, where this is like where the leader of one of these countries resides, figurative or in actuality. And so like you get a sense of that from the scale of these buildings. Like Buckingham Palace, it looks big when you see it on TV, but it actually lives up to the hype and expectation of it when you see it in person. And so I would suggest, if you have the time, certainly visit during the day. I think there would be more crowds, but it's just as nice at night. It's very nicely lit up. The unfortunate thing was that on this day, there wasn't any rain, but it was cold. And as it got down into the night, it became especially chilly. And standing out there taking pictures where, it's relatively open, the wind was blowing through, it was like I had to take out my gloves. I had to make sure I was nicely bundled up and everything. So that's the only thing that I will caution. Depending on the time of year that you're visiting, and then also the time of day, just dress appropriately. But it could be a really nice experience. Like I said, certainly you can stop by during the day, but it's also worth visiting at night. I did not visit during the day, but I would imagine that especially during touristy times of years, that there would be a lot more people out in front of the palace. But visiting at night, there wasn't like, a large crowd or anything like that. I was able to take pictures in front of the palace and then also across the way at the Victoria Memorial, so it was a really cool experience. If you actually have an interest in the royal family, there are tours that are offered, as well as I believe like in the morning you have the changing of the guard. It wasn't really anything that I was interested in. So for me, it worked out perfectly to just stop by in the evening and kind of get a lay of the land. But if you're interested in more of like the royal family experience and things like that, certainly stop by during the day. And obviously, if you're going on a tour or anything like that, go ahead and get your tickets in advance. Afterwards, I found like a really nice Italian restaurant nearby. There were a few shops and things like that. It was actually kind of later on down in the evening, but there are like some really nice restaurants just within walking distance. So I highly recommend visiting the area, checking it out, seeing it for yourself. It's a nice experience. Thanks for tuning in. To ensure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, go ahead and click that thumbs up button if you like what you saw, and go ahead and share it on social media.